Keep writing questions, keep writing questions, keep writing questions.
No.
Oh my god. That's funny.
You guys can ask whatever you want. Doesn't matter. Doesn't have to be on the paper.
I think he's gonna want it on the paper.
No, I already told you guys can, whatever you want.
You guys just kind of have to
Doesn't have to be scripted.
stand.
I can give up my seat. I don't really.
I mean, yeah,
All right,
mine.
so, Will, you want to stand over there?
Sure.
Daniel, why don't you sit over here? All right.
Oh, wow.
Bro, why is this?
There you go, man.
Why is he got us doing this thing?
I don't know.
Excuse me. Very sorry.
Oh.
I guess the other room would have been better. Huh?
That's just what we do.
Usually.
I don't know what it's a setup. It's a setup.
I think it's the mood.
It's the setup, yeah.
I guess we'll find out later.
Maybe because it's a more intimate setting.
Oh.
Maybe it's the camera.
Everybody's all close up and personal.
That's why he did it. Okay. But you guys can ask him. So who's gonna ask him?
Who?
Ask him, how come we didn't do it out there?
Oh, I got you.
Yeah,
I'm very outspoken.
Yeah, ask him, because I'm curious, so I'll let you ask
So,
him.
but when he gives me that look, everybody just laughs. Everybody laughs.
He always gives me that look. I'm willing. I'll take the head.
No, I got your back. I'll try.
That look.
I won't leave you hanging.
The worst part is I know what look you're talking about.
I
can't do
it.
You didn't want to do it in the big room?
No, I kind of wanted a intimate atmosphere, but I didn't realize like everybody was.
Yeah.
We're all thinking,
Yeah.
maybe we should go out there and do it.
I know. All right, let's do a little bit in here and kind of like see if it gets too hot in here. Neal, you let me know because it's kind of warm.
I'm not hot, but
Okay. All right. Are we rolling over here? Yeah. Okay. You guys want to sit down?
Sure.
Okay, we are very lucky to have the one and only Neal Pogue with us today. We've done plenty of research on Neal, so we know that he's got a long history of mix engineering, and it's, like I said, it's an honor, it's a privilege to have somebody this important in the music industry and somebody this humble that will come on a Thanksgiving week and speak to us. So we want to first thank you, Neal.
Very nice.
And if you could start us off and tell us a little bit about your background and mixing and how you got into the field that you're in.
Well, I'm from Roselle, New Jersey, it's a little town in New Jersey, probably the size of your finger. But how I don't know, I've always wanted to do music since I was a kid, and I guess I got into it because I was a musician first. I was a drummer, and I played in bands in my little town. And when I traveled here back in the 80s, you know, I wanted to be a live drummer. But then I always was into the studio. Like when I was recording with my band, I was always the guy that was inside the studio that wanted to stay longer. That was more of the producer of the band. I wasn't much into the recording side of it yet, but I was more intrigued about the production and the studio and the faders and EQs and all that stuff. So as I got older, once I moved here, you know, I said, you know, I really want to be in the studio rather than being this touring drummer. So I went to school, this place called Soundmaster that was in Burbank at the time. It's gone now, so it was a little building. Went for a couple of years, got out. Then I interned here for about, let me go back. There was a studio called Larrabee Sound, and they still have a location in North Hollywood, but they had one in West Hollywood, and that's why I interned at. But before that, I worked for Michael Jackson's brother, Randy, for about a year, and interned at his little studio. And I did that for a while, then I moved over to Larrabee Sound, and that's where I really learned all my skill of mixing, you know, and worked for a lot of popular guys at that time, and kind of took upon their whole style and created my own style. I know I'm probably rushing through it, but that's pretty much how it happened for me. It didn't happen that quick, trust me. It was a slow grind of hitting the pavement and trying to find a studio to intern at, and but as things went along, as the years went along, then I went from interning to becoming a second engineer. Because when you intern, you're kind of like getting coffee, clean bathrooms, you know, going to the store, all that type of stuff. So it's not like all glitz and glamour. I even had a job where I was cleaning up the client's. I was walking the dog and cleaning up his dog mess. That's all part of interning, you know. And after that, you know, then I moved on to being an assistant is what it's called. So, and when you're an assistant, you help out the mix engineer or the recording engineer. So like setting up mics and setting up the board and doing certain types of chores. And then after that, I went out, you know, I was ready to go out on my own, and I did that. And but I was still here in California. And because I was here from '84 through 1990. And from 1990, I moved to Atlanta, and that's where I really got a lot of my success of working with Bobby Brown and TLC and Organized Noise and Outkast and Tony Braxton, Usher, all the Atlanta acts that were out there at the time. And I was there from 1990 till 2001. Then I came back here in 2001 and had a lot of success here too. And around 2002, 2003, I started working on the Outkast album, Speaker Box, The Love Below. We had a lot of success on that. Worked on Hey Ya and She's in My Lap and Prototype and some other songs I can't remember right now. And I won a Grammy for Album of the Year. And fast forward to this year, I'm nominated for Best Rap Album for mixing Igor, Tyler, the Creator. And so fast forward. Yeah. There's a whole lot of stuff in between that. I just gave it a fast version, you know. So I don't want to bore you with my life. You know, but is there any questions you guys wanted to do or anything?
We'll start on this side.
Oh, hey. Let me pull up my questions.
And also, say your name and your grade, so we're just practicing the
hello,
kind of
my name is Miles Platt. I'm a sophomore.
Okay, cool.
I have a couple questions.
Okay.
How has the music scene and industry changed since you started? And like, what major changes have you noticed?
Changed a lot for me, from working with tape, you know, working with 2-inch tape. You know, you have the machines where you have the 24 tracks and 48 tracks. But for me, it changed a lot, which I'm grateful that I came through that, because you know, I kind of wouldn't wish this time on anybody of starting, because you really don't know where it all came from. And for me, working with tape up to now, working with all the digi-stations, you know, so I know how to kind of manipulate the digital stations to sound more like analog, which is not, so it's not so digital, which is cool, but I'm more into the analog sound than I am to the digital sound. So, and even, you know, growing up and, you know, going from 8-track to cassettes to, you know, and vinyl and little 45s and everything. So this business is really no different than what it was, because this business has always been a singles-driven industry. So really seeing, you know, seeing iTunes and all that being single-driven, it's no big deal to me. It's always been singles-driven, but people did create albums, but it was always about the first single, the second single, always about that. So it really hasn't changed that much, except for the formats from tape to, you know, to CDs, and now we got streaming. And it's pros and cons of all that. With streaming, I think it's great because you guys can go back and hear a lot of the older stuff. You know what I mean? So I think that's the great thing about streaming. So now you can hear a lot of stuff that we worked on and really appreciate the music of where it all came from, and music that you hear now, some of it is sample heavy, so now you can go back and figure out where they got the sample from, and not, you know, say that, oh, that's so-and-so song. Oh, no, that was his song before it was his, you know, so it's kind of cool.
If Alright, so my name's Malia. I'm a senior.
We all know Malia.
Hello.
Hey, Malia.
Alright, so I have, so since you've moved a lot, like when you started working out, which coast music would you like prefer mixing more? Say like here in LA, more like in Atlanta, East Coast?
That's a good question because there is different styles in different cities. I've worked in New York, I've worked in Nashville, I've worked in LA. Being that I'm from New Jersey, I'm from the East Coast, I'm more prone to the East Coast sound. Whatever that is now, I don't think there is an East Coast sound now because everything pretty much sounds Southern now, which is kind of funny to me because Southern music was fighting for its own identity back in the 90s. And now that they've kind of taken over the music industry, everybody's following the Southern way of doing things. But me, I guess I prefer more of the East Coast sound, with a little bit of something in it, But I'm all about soulfulness first, though. But East Coast sound, definitely.
I'm Olivia. I'm a freshman. How do you work with the artist's vision and your like intuition to create compromises and like overall like a good sound?
That's a good one. Well, it's all about service because I'm creating a service for the artist, and a lot of times, but within that, I can't lose myself because he did hire me for my sound, for what I do, and for what he's heard that I'm capable of doing. So I have to serve him or her first. But there is a compromise, and sometimes I have to kind of, when the artist wants something and I don't feel that, I have to kind of pretend that I am doing what he wants. Because sometimes this business is psychosis. Because like if I do something that he thinks I'm doing and I'm really not, he thinks it sounds like what he did. So a lot of it's trickery. But no, it's but all jokes aside, it's hopefully that artist wants to walk into the studio and compromise and not hire me for what he likes and then try to take over, and then make it his. That doesn't make any sense. Which I've run into that a lot. But it's just all about sitting down and talking to the artist first, which I like to do. I like to talk to the artist or the producer and really see what their vision is and see if they really want to infuse what I can offer, which is always helpful first, rather than just jumping right into it. You got to have some type of understanding first,
I'm a sophomore. My name's Kaya, and I'm wondering, when did you decide you wanted to do this as your career?
Oh, that's good. I think when I was about 14, I decided I wanted to be in the music business. I knew that I wanted, like I said before, I wanted to be a musician first, but I was curious about the production side of it because I really didn't have any thoughts of being a mixer. That came much later after I went to school and really, because I went to school to really to mix my own records as a producer, but then it became a job when people started liking what I did. I was like, oh, okay, this has turned into something else here. But I would say wanted to be in the music business when I was like 14, but wanted to be a mixer. I think I was maybe like 22, 23, something like that.
So when you started mixing your own records and people started calling because they liked your mixes, were you using analog gear at the time, or were you using...
Well, it wasn't at home. I was in the studio working, and I worked for, I don't know if you remember a guy named Jeff Lorber.
Okay.
He was a jazz musician, and he was doing a lot of production, and he wanted me to mix something for him. And after that, he started recommending me to other people, and and then I would work and do some mixing for them. Then all of a sudden, people started liking what I did, and that's how it became this thing, which I wasn't really thinking about, being that. I was kind of unsure of where I fit in in the scheme of things, but it all worked out.
Was it there a click moment where you're like, okay, well, I keep getting these clients to do this, I'm just gonna dive right in. I'm gonna go head first.
Yeah, right. Because it was fun. First of all, it was fun.
Yeah.
I loved being in the studio. I was more of a studio rat, and I loved it. So, having people appreciate what I did, it was rewarding, you know, because I never thought about being that guy, so and then becoming that. It's just funny how life is.
Yeah.
You know, you go into being one thing and all of a sudden you're something else, and so that's why I said don't ever think that life's not going to switch on you, because it does. It really does. Because you think you're going to be one thing, and you end up being something else.
So true.
Yeah.
So, my name's Cassandra, I'm in 12th grade, and my question, or one of them, would be, is any of the genres harder to mix, if music genre is harder to mix than the rest, and if so, which, and like why?
For me, I grew up on all types of music, so I always say that my brain's like an encyclopedia, so whenever I'm given something, it always reminds me of something. Nothing is new, so it always reminds me of something that I listened to when I was younger. So to me, personally, nothing is difficult. One genre I don't want to be stuck in is hip hop. I love hip hop, but I don't want to be the hip hop guy. I like to work in R&B, rock. You know, I like to be in everything because that's what I grew up listening to, all types of music. So I don't want to be stuck in any genre. You know what I mean? It's not just hip hop. I just don't want to be stuck doing anything in particular. I just want to always stretch out and do it all.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so my name is Daniel Franco, and I am a senior in 12th grade. So, what do you think is the best music genre when it comes to mixing in general?
There isn't. To me, there isn't. Maybe some people have a preference, but I just all genres are great. You know,
It's a wide
really
variety.
is. You know, and as long as it's soulful. I think there's soul in all music, and as long as it's colorful, as long as the melody is beautiful, I'm all for it. Doesn't matter what. I don't care if it's polka music. If it's great, it's great. You know. Yeah.
I'm Ari. I'm a sophomore. And do you think other artists and engineers should be open to more music?
Yeah, I think they should. And like I said about streaming, being that you guys have access to all types of music, I think it does open you guys up now. Because back when I was coming up, we had cliques. You know, it was always like the guys who loved funk and the rock guys and the R&B guys, and everybody didn't cross over. We were kind of closeted, meaning that when we went home, we listened to other genres, but out with our friends, we were always in little cliques. But yeah, I think everybody should keep their minds open for everything, because there's always something for everybody in every genre. Yeah.
My name is Dylan. I'm a junior. What was, in your opinion, the most important mistake, or the mistake you most learned from in your career?
Man, I gotta think about that one. Back when we were working with tape, I accidentally erased a track, and that was the most terrifying thing, because now, when you guys are working with the digital stations, you can undo. Back then, there was no undo. Once it was gone, it was gone. So it's just making the mistake of not paying attention. So that made me pay attention more. I mean, even now when I'm working in digital, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I can undo it. I'm always paying attention now. And I like to stay focused on what I'm doing, because that one moment, it terrified me. You know, and thank God that we had copies back. We had tape copies, so I can go and take that tape copy and lock them up and put it back. But back in those days, once you erased, and it happened to all of us, once we erased something, that was it. It was gone.
Can you walk us through what tape? They don't know what like a reel-to-reel type of recording situation is.
I guess it's. I think there was a sign out there. We went into the film area. There was a tape sign.
Yeah.
So it looks like that, but it's 2-inch tape is about this thick, and it's tape. I mean, it's how you explain it?
Yeah.
It's a big reel of tape about this big, and you spool it, and you wind it up on this tape machine. It's just it's hard to explain. You just have to be there to see this.
So it records from like, because I never actually used a tape machine either. So it'll record like part of this reel to this reel, and then
it spools from one reel to the other. So basically, as it's playing, it's spooling onto another reel.
Yeah, and it's a
once
magnetic
it's
tape.
done, it's done, right? Magnetic tape. And some came in. It started from 4-track to 8-track to 16, then to 24. But then as it went to 24, people wanted more, so they created something called SMPTE, which would lock 2 tape machines up. And then you have 48, and then some people wanted more, 72. So then you lock up 3 tape machines, and they look like big wash machines, basically, just huge things. And I think for me, being that you guys have digital, you guys have no patience now because everything's so instant. Back in those days, we have to wait for it to rewind. Then we hit play, we have to wait for it to lock up. So we have more patience back then. But you guys being everything, you're texting, you're emailing, everything's so instant that, and that's why your patience is so thin. But us, we were more patient. We'd have time to talk to each other. You know, as a tape is rewinding, we have a conversation, or as they're locking up. But now, and you guys are not as social as we was back in the day. You guys, everything is texting. Even when you're sitting next to each other, you're texting something. It's like you can't even say hi to each other, so it's pretty funny. I have kids, so everything's about texting and emailing, so it's crazy, you know. But yeah, so hopefully one day you guys can probably tour a studio and see an actual tape machine, if they have one, and see how you go, ooh, you know. And you know, as far as editing, like you guys edit inside your DigiStations, and back in those days we'd have to cut tape, which was fun for me because to cut a single version, meaning that if a song was too long, I would have to cut the tape and make it shorter into a shorter song, into a single version. And sometimes we would have to make a longer version, so we'd copy a certain section over, and we'd have to. Back in those days, it was called a disco version or extended club version. So a lot of the old school club versions that you hear, those are actually edited. So it's really not the band playing over and over again. They're edited into that. So so we had fun back in those days. You know what I mean?
So each, if you have a 4-track, each of those tracks has their own
something on
tape?
it.
Or
Each
are
of
those
those
all on the
tracks,
same tape?
Each of those tracks has something on it. Like if you have a 24-track machine, you have drum, snare, whatever. Each track has something on it. But there were some people who didn't have a 48-track, and they try to fit different things in between the. Like if you had a vocal here, then you might want to put a tambourine on the track too in a different space. But once you mix it, then you have to remember that there's a tambourine on it. You have to. It was wild.
Gosh.
It was wild. Yeah.
Okay. I was wondering, so...
what's your name?
My name's Layla, and I'm a senior. And I was wondering, so I feel like when you first hear just the bass of a song, there's so many different directions you can go in as a mixer. So I was wondering, in the process of mixing each song, how do you decide which tools or sounds or which mood to create when you're doing it? And does it depend on more the artist's general style, what they've done in the past, or the lyrics and what they're kind of insinuating, and how do you decide what direction to go in?
With me, it's about the song. The song moves me. Of course, I'll listen to the artist's demo first and see where he's going with it. But as far as mixing it, it's the mood of the song that moves me on what tools to, what processing, and plugins, whatever, to use on a certain song, how to EQ it. It's more, it's a mood for me,
yeah,
and how to approach it personally. Where to take it from where the demo is. Because of course the artist or the producer has an idea of how he wants to do it, but then it's my job to take it and enhance it from that point.
Okay.
So with me, I'm spontaneous. I don't have a set template for anything. And a lot of guys do, but I don't. It's hard for me to work like that because I think every situation is different. I mean, there's so many different kick drums, so many different 808s, so many different vocal tones that you can't EQ the same vocal the same way. You just can't, because everybody in this room has a different voice and different tones. So I would EQ each of your voices differently, because that's how it is.
And so when you are going, let's talk about record or mixing vocals. In each different person that you've worked with, do they have different resonances that you have to tame?
Yeah, and different microphones too. Different microphones. If they're using the wrong mic for their voice, because you can't use any microphone for a person's voice because like I said, the tone of their voice will not work with that capsule or how that mic was engineered. So that's why it's hopefully you'll have a variety of mics to try out for that artist. Or if you've been in the business long enough like me, I'll know what type of mic to use for that person's voice because I've heard that voice before probably. So I'll say, oh, you might be better to try it like a U47 on you, and for that person the Telefunken, and for that person something else. So for 87. So if you've been in the business long enough, your ears can hear. You know what mic is good for that person's voice.
Wow, you got to really.
Yeah.
How do you learn all of those different mics? Just being in the studios?
Yeah, just trial and error.
That's
what it is, trial and error. Yeah. And sometimes in the middle of a take, you got to stop and say, "Oh, this mic is not good for you," because you think it is, and this might sound muffled, and EQing is not going to do it. So you just have to change the mic. Then it'll make your job easier on EQing. And sometimes you may not have to touch it, because it's already perfect for that voice. But then there's other factors that come into that. Other different sounds may suck up the tone of that person's voice, and then you got to EQ according to what's around it. Because sometimes a lot of bass or synthesizers, all types of things may suck up a lot of that. So you have to, EQ it and try to have so it shines through.
So do a lot of artists that you work with, they give you the vocals after they've recorded with their studios and their mics, and are there certain circumstances you're like, well, what if you tried this mic instead, or are they pretty locked in?
Pretty. After it's done, it's done. Then I have to go through hell to EQ it. Yeah, it's been a lot of that. And a lot of nowadays, artists, being that back in the day they would have an engineer that knew what he was doing that would find the right mic, but now a lot of people do it in their homes. They just have a cheap mic or whatever, and they just record themselves, not knowing that mic is not good for their voice. So I get a lot of homegrown, recordings, and some are good, some are really bad, and I just have to work with it and try to make like, oh, it was on purpose, and try to make it, try to make like, oh, that's cool, and try to make it a trend, you know what I mean?
Well, you do a great job at it.
Hello, my name is Isaac. I'm in 10th grade. And as a starting mix engineer, I have a question. So why do you put your tracks in mono when you want to mix it?
I don't put it in mono unless it's a mono track, and and that's pretty much it. I get a lot of mono tracks, but I don't put it in mono. Like I may get a mono vocal track because it is a mono vocal track. A lot of tracks now are on because you work in Logic, and once you export it out of Logic into a stem, it becomes a 2-track, but it's not stereo, it's still mono. It's 2 tracks, but it's not stereo. A lot of people are like, no, stereo, no, it isn't. It's just 2 tracks mono. That's what it is. But there's some times when I would say I might put it in. I don't know. I don't think I've ever put anything in mono. That's a good one. So I don't think I've ever had unless it's already mono. And then if it is mono, I'd have to put something on it to give it a little spread because it may be kind of plain being in mono. May have to put something on it to make it feel something else. Maybe
are there some instances like if your kick's in mono and your snare's in mono that you want to change your snare to stereo? Is there any?
Or put something on it, or just put like a nice stereo reverb on it.
Okay.
To give it a spread, or on kick drums, you might put something on it to make it feel a little wider. You know what I mean? But I don't think I ever go the opposite way to make it mono. Yeah.
My name is Will. I'm in 10th grade. And this is kind of, I was listening to Boredom from Tyler the Creator the other day, and I just kind of got this question from that. Like, Tyler, he's an artist that uses a lot of collaborators. So is it ever like, how do you approach kind of fitting the other vocals into the context of the song,
I create moods, actually, to tell you the truth, because I can't remember who exactly was on Boredom. as far as the artist was on there. I'm horrible with titles.
Rex.
Sorry?
On boredom?
Yeah.
Rex Orange County?
Yes, thank you. So with that voice, you know, you just have to, and that goes back to, you know, he might have recorded his vocal at home and then sent it to Tyler, you know what I mean, or came in the studio and they did it. It's about just creating a mood, like how fun would it be if he came in like this? I can't remember the actual session because I've done so many sessions since then. I know where I did it at, but I can't remember the exact session. But it's just plain and simple. It's just creating a mood. Like what would intrigue the audience? What would, you know, make you guys love it? And like I said, I'm so spontaneous. I'm never like I'm never here. I'm all over the place. You know, at any given moment, I'm doing something else to it. Now, if you played it for me, then I'll be like, oh, okay, this is what I did. You know. But things become a blur after you. Sometimes like I was telling Alex, I've been doing it for 30 years, and sometimes, and after I work on something, I don't go back and listen to it because I know that once I go back and listen to it, I'll say, man, I should have done that to it. I should have done this. So I tend to not go back and listen to anything I do. Unless I'm in the supermarket and I hear it, or if I'm out or I hear somebody else's car driving by, cool. But I tell myself it's not for me to listen to anymore. I did it for you. You know what I mean? More than anything else, it's for the fans. But I mean, so once you hear it and once you say that you love it, I know I did my job, you know.
So over your career, your clientele has gone through different shifts.
Mm-hmm.
You were in Atlanta, you were doing Outkast, Goody Mob, and then it looked like it kind of did some more mainstream stuff with Nicki Minaj and Lil Wayne.
Yeah.
And then about the 2010, there's some rock stuff, right? AWOL Nation and Travis Barker or whatever. And now it's kind of gone to, I guess, an eclectic, LA-centric group of people. How does this whole clientele shift throughout your career?
I think, you know, I mean, thank God for hip-hop, I will say that, because a lot of people nowadays want more of the edgier sound. And sometimes, like, even after I worked on the Outkast stuff, a lot of people called because they wanted that edgier sound. After I worked on Flower Boy album and Tyler and Igor, people wanted more of that, more of a more polished but edgier, because Tyler is polished but edgier. And it's more the Outkast template, because what we did with Outkast, that was when we really focused in on mixing. Nowadays they really don't. It's like, let's just go. But thank God we're getting more into people really wanting more substance now. And so with Tyler, you know, because Tyler's earlier stuff is not as polished as it is now. It's more edgy and just like more like punk rock. But now he wants more of a polished sound, but still keep the edge there. And so I think people are calling because it doesn't matter. Like I worked on this girl named Carolyn Rose. She's like a alternative rock artist, pop rock artist, and she wanted, you know, and she called me and she wanted, you know, edgier sound. And a lot of my clientele will be in different genres, but they just want that. I mean, if you listen to country music, it's not country music anymore. You know, like even Taylor Swift went from being a country artist and she's went to pop, and she's flourished. And her sound is more hip hop if you listen to it. You know, it's got the pop, you know, melodies and everything, but underneath it's a little heavier because hip hop is kind of taking over. Yeah.
My name is Jared, and I'm in 11th grade.
Oh,
stand up?
Yeah.
My name is Jared, and I'm in 11th grade, and my question is, well, I know, like, for all artists and mixers, you never feel like something's, like, completely done. You always feel like you can work on it. But when, I guess, you're finished, how do you check your mix? Like, do you just know from experience, or do you, like, check it on car speakers, headphones?
I used to, but now, like, the rooms I work in, I have a room at my house I work in, and then there's an outside place called the Mix Room in Burbank. And I've worked in those rooms for so long that I know it.
Oh, you know.
But there's times when I doubt myself and I'll go to the car and I'll play it. But that's very, very rare. But most of the time, I know my room. I know how much bass that it'll have, you know, once it's played outside of this room, or out of my studio, or out of the outside studio.
Got it. Uh-huh.
Yeah, but I said the best test is in the car, though.
In the car?
Yeah, that's the best test.
Why do you say that?
I just think because that's where you listen to music most. I know a lot of you guys listen in earbuds. I think, to me, the earbuds is the worst to listen to test a mix, because that's where you enjoy music, not to test a mix. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because even when you listen to your favorite artists, are you really critiquing their mix, or are you just listening to the song? So to me, I feel that earbuds is when you enjoy the song, not to test a mix. Because sometimes you can't hear the 808 in the best way, the bass. You can't hear bass how you really should feel it. Mm-hmm. So you really don't know. You're doubting it. Right. But a lot of people nowadays, they test mixes on earbuds, and I'm confused by that whole thing. I really am. But hey.
And to kind of follow up on his question, when you mix, do you mix for like a pre-master leaving Headroom, or do you do that after a mix?
A lot of guys, they take their limiter or compressor off the master bus, which is the overall mix. But I leave mine on because that's part of my sound. So I don't take mine off for the mastering guy to put his on there, because then it's going to change it and become what he thinks it is. So to answer your question, sometimes I'll leave Headroom, sometimes I don't. Because sometimes I feel as though it sounds the best if it's, kind of there, kind of in that, bouncing in that red. That's part of what it sounds like.
So the master's got an easy job.
Yeah, sometimes the mastering guy will say, "Can you bring it down a bit?" I'm like, "Nah, I can't work with it."
Wow. I got one more quick question. I know this is a very general question, but what's one tip you can give about mastering? Like one secret that
I don't personally master, and I don't.
I mean, sorry, mixing.
Mixing, okay. Do it your way. That's one thing. Do it your way. Don't worry about what anybody else is doing, because that's what's going to make you become you. Of course, borrow, but don't become someone else's sound. You do you. You know what I mean? Don't be afraid to be you. Don't be afraid to do something that is you. Of course, we take tips from different people, but what's going to make you, stand out? You know what I mean? Like me, I don't think I have a sound. People think I do, but I don't, because I don't have a template. But I always make sure that I'm competing with the next guy. I'm not following. I'm trying to kick his butt. You know what I mean? Because I look at music as competition. Some people don't. Oh no, we're all in this together. Yeah, it's great, but at the same time, I don't like being number 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. I like to hit number 1. Then okay, cool. I'm good.
I got a couple questions about Igor, and that's a really, nowadays there's not too many. Wait for that bell. There's not too many albums that really have a beginning, a middle, and an end. I feel like Igor really is that. Yeah, and when you mixed, how did you use that to that having a beginning, middle, and end, kind of a story in your mix? And there's and you did things a little bit differently on some of those songs, where the kick is barely punching, and a lot of really creative stuff on there. So
yeah, that was on purpose, because Igor is a mood. It wasn't about a specific, he didn't want, some of his raps don't make sense, and he did that on purpose, because it's not about being the best rapper or proving to be a best rapper on that record. That record, Igor is what it is. It's just ugly but kind. It's all that. That's what Igor is. Igor is all that. Wasn't Igor the guy that helped Frankenstein, the Dr. Frankenstein? He was the guy that he had a handicap, but he wasn't a mean person. You know what I mean? So it's really everything in one. So you see it as being ugly, but it's a beautiful soul. It's all that. You know what I mean? But it's of service. It's just this thing. It's just a monster, but it's not a monster at the same time. It's hard to explain. And but we didn't mix it in that way from beginning to end. We mixed it in different ways. And so, but after it was sequenced, it became this. Of course, we knew the intro. It was going to be that intro was always going to be that intro, but it was just a spontaneous thing. But making sure that it's not about my vocals being loud. He wanted to make sure his vocals weren't up front. He wanted to be part of. He wanted to be part of the painting. Where you know some of these records, the vocals are low. That was on purpose, because it wasn't about focusing on what he's saying. It's about it just being one nice painting, one mood. Where some records, the vocals loud, because their artists want you to hear every single word. But I think it should be one movement, almost like classical music. It's all one movement. You know what I mean?
And when his vocals are pitched, is that something that he did or you did?
That was something that he did, because he wanted it to just have, like I said, it was a mood, it was a thing, it was a vibe at that moment. And a lot of those records were sped up. A lot of those records that you hear on the record weren't. I mixed them at a slower speed, and when you heard it, we sped them up. So a lot of records are faster, because he wanted to be quick, faster. Tyler he's a brilliant mind. He's always on a whole nother level than everybody else. And he's such an encyclopedia of music. People see him as this guy who's goofy guy, crazy. He's got that side, but he's got this serious side. He listens to all types of music. He's just a music nerd. He knows almost every record. It's crazy. And that's why a lot of his albums are like a gumbo of things. And he'll always have soulful and beautiful bridges and everything, because he's into that stuff.
Yeah, there's I forget which. Oh, Thank You. It's got the sample by this Japanese artist. So when you mix samples, and you've been doing that for probably a long time. How do you go about doing that? Mixing the sampled work into regular mixes.
I think it really is about, sometimes samples is about blending the drums with the sample, trying to make it feel like the new drums is part of the sample itself. So it's all about balance and volume, finding the right EQ at that given moment. It's hard to explain what it is now, but just when you're mixing it, you just want it to feel like one. You don't want it to feel disconnected, where sometimes you want people to not really know that it's a sample until they read the credits and they go, oh, it's a sample. I don't want people to know that it's a sample, unless it's something that's been used so many times. You can't help. They're gonna know it's a sample. But if it's something that they've never heard before, you want it to sound something that's cohesive.
Yeah, Igor's full of that. I mean, you did it such a
bits and pieces.
Yeah.
Igor's bits and pieces of things, and going in and out. A lot of the arrangements are real, real left, I can say, because you'll go from a short verse to a bridge to a hook, and then come back somewhere else. So it's all on purpose. He kind of wanted to make his own little Beach Boys Pet Sounds type of thing.
I have a question. Yeah, you're fine. Great, thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'll follow that up real quick.